In this video, Daniel Naroditsky, he sacrifices the bishop and then he sacrifices the rook in the attack of the year in this insane online blitz game. But let's start from the very beginning here. In the game, Daniel, playing as white, opens 1e4, best by test, and Magnus, the GOAT. You all know him. You all love him. He goes e6, the French defense. All right, d4, d5, and then e5. Daniel playing the advanced variation, gaining space in the center, but not going for the absolute main line, which of course is knight to c3. So instead, e5 on the board. Now Magnus, c5. This guy knows his French defense. But here Daniel, he eschews modern theory. He does not go c3. Instead, he plays the move knight to f3. Now, what is the problem with this move, and why is it so rare here? Well, white almost always goes c3, bolstering the pawn chain. That way, if black ever takes on d4, white takes back like this. But instead, with the move knight to f3 on the board, if black takes on d4, white cannot recapture with the c-pawn. But Daniel, he knows this, and he's actually a big specialist in this line for white. Here's the idea. Magnus, he can take on d4, but instead of that, he actually goes knight to c6, avoiding the trade. But Daniel, he insists on allowing d4 to be sacrificed. He plays the move bishop to d3, and this move, it's not just a developing move. It's not just avoiding c3. With this move, you are literally giving up the pawn on d4, as now the bishop blocks the queen's defense of d4. And finally, Magnus trades on d4, c takes d4, and here we go. This is where the fireworks in this game begin. All right, Daniel, short castles is the move, and how does Magnus want to develop? He has so many ideas, so many plans here. Do you want to go knight g to e7, or bishop e7, or knight h6, or bishop c5, or a6, b5, or queen b6? What do you want to do here as black? In the game, he goes for a different idea than all of the above. He plays the move g6, intending potentially bishop g7. Now, this move is typically very, very rare in the French defense. However, it does work out right here, because with this pawn on e5 not being supported by a pawn on d4, that makes this pawn super, super weak, and therefore bishop g7 actually applies some useful pressure to this pawn on the e5 square. So Magnus finding a very clever way to fianchetto his dark squared bishop. All right, now Daniel, the speed demon, bishop g5 is the move, attacking the queen on d8. Where is the queen going to go? Do you block the attack with something like that, or bishop e7 and so on, or do you move the queen? Now, it turns out here, the Ben Feingold counterattack with the move f6 is the strongest move, but instead, Magnus here, he moves the queen. Queen to c7 is played on the board. And now, of course, the pawn on e5, it's being attacked twice. That pawn is super, super vulnerable. If that pawn falls, white's entire position will literally collapse in an instant. So white, of course, he must defend the pawn, and he does that with the move c3. Daniel, why did you not go rook to e1 here? I have absolutely no clue. Daniel is a madman in this game. Instead of defending e5, he plays the move c3. Okay, this is truly, truly absurd. Or is it? It turns out here, the pawn on the e5 square is actually poisoned. If you take the pawn, very bad things happen. Now, this is a good time for a puzzle. If you like the puzzles, pause the video right now and try to figure out why knight takes e5 right here is a bad idea for black. So pause the video, try to figure it out, and comment down below what you think the solution is. It turns out here, black takes the pawn, white trades, and then bishop b5, and the king is forced to move. Or you block the attack, but then you trade, and again, the king is forced to move, meaning the king will not castle in this game. So overall, that is not the right move. Instead, in the game, Magnus here, he trades on c3, d takes c3, and we have knight takes, and again, the same idea applies. If black trades on e5, white trades back, and then goes bishop e5 with a huge attack against the black king. Therefore, instead, a6 was chosen, blocking the b5 square. And don't you worry, the bishop/rook sack is coming up very shortly in this game. Don't go anywhere. All right, from here, Daniel, rook c1. The rook slides over and attacks the queen on c7 via the x-ray attack. Magnus ignores it and instead counterattacks against the pawn on e5 with bishop g7. Daniel, he sees this and he defends, rook to e1. Now Daniel has almost every single piece out onto the board onto nearly perfect squares. Therefore, sooner or later, he's going to have to start attacking the black position. All right, now, Magnus, h6, drives back the bishop. We have bishop h4. Now, black, knight gd7. And here, Daniel plays the very creative idea, bishop to f6. The idea being, if you take the bishop, white takes back with the pawn, attacking the knight, and therefore gaining a critical tempo against the black position. All right, in response, Magnus here, what does he do? Well, he slides the king over to f8, defending the bishop instead of simply castling. Now, why did Magnus do this instead of simply castling? Beats me. Let me know down below if you think you know. That is simply way over my pay grade here. Perhaps Magnus trying to defend h6 with the rook or something. Who the heck knows? All right, instead, in the game, here, Daniel, his turn to move. What should he be doing? Well, turns out there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of good ideas for white here. The best ones include taking the bishop or developing the queen to say c2, b3, or a4. All of these moves are very, very good for white. But instead, white here goes queen d2. Now, why is queen d2 weaker than the alternatives queen c2 or queen b3 or queen to a4? It's very complicated, but the queen needs to have access to this diagonal to potentially attack the black king in certain positions, as we're about to see. In response, Magnus here, he finds the best continuation. He takes on f6 right now. This is the best time to do it because here, after e takes, then knight g8, the knight attacks the pawn, and the black king is actually somewhat safe on f8. There's no easy way to attack it. Now, if the queen was on, say, c2 or b3 or a4, the queen would have access to, say, a3 or c5, attacking the black king right now. However, in this position, the queen does not have access to the king, and therefore black is doing just fine. But this is where the insane attack of the year begins. Daniel, he sacrifices the bishop. How else can you describe this move right here? What the heck is going on? Why did he do this? Well, it's very simple. Here, black takes with the rook. That is the best move. And here, the strongest move, this is truly mind-blowing, is b4, threatening b5, threatening to attack the rook and the knight. And it turns out, with the pressure on the c file against the black queen, it turns out this is actually good for white. However, instead, in the game, Daniel, he doesn't go b4. Instead, knight b5, he jumps up and attacks the queen. Fortunately for us, he does this because after queen d8, Daniel, he sacks the rook. Rook takes c6, giving up the bishop and then the rook back to back. What is going on here? What has gotten into this guy? Why did he just do this? It's simple. After rook takes, the move is queen to b4. The queen finally getting access to the black king on the f8 square. The king hunt has begun. King to e8. Now the move is knight to e5, jumping in with the knight, threatening all kinds of ideas. What is black supposed to do? If you slide the rook over to, say, b6, then queen to c5. The queen infiltrates, and white is threatening all kinds of ideas, including knight c7, which is almost checkmate. Instead, black, here, Magnus, he takes on f6. Knight takes f6. The knight is now back into the game. And beyond that, the knight does control, say, d7. That could be useful in the future. But here, Daniel shows the big idea. He trades on c6. Knight takes c6, the b pawn takes back, and then knight d6. And look at this. If the king goes to d7, you take the f pawn, forking the queen and the rook. But if you don't do that, if you go king to, say, f8, as Magnus did in the game, you win the bishop with check on the king with knight takes c8. Daniel winning back material. Material is now almost even in this game. Black, king g7 is the move. Then we have knight to b6. And here, Magnus, he's only up a single pawn. And beyond that, Daniel, he has the passed a pawn and a very simple plan of pushing the pawn down the board ASAP. All right, Magnus, queen c7, controlling e5, setting up e5 ideas. But now Daniel, a4, the march of the pawn has begun. We have c5, attacking the queen, queen b5, c4, and then a5. The race between these two pawn chains has begun. All right, Magnus, knight g4. The knight jumps down, and here he's threatening queen takes h2. You have to block it. So g3 defends the threat, and then knight d5. The knight is now re-centralized in this game. In response, Daniel, rook to e3. The rook lift on the third rank, and then we have rook b8, the rook sliding over and pressuring the queen and the knight on the b6 square. Now, of course, a6 would be a good move if it weren't for the fact that you lose the knight on the spot on b6. Therefore, instead, queen to a4 is played, retreating and potentially intending maybe... Actually, it's hard to find the right idea for white here. d7 is controlled, and Daniel is running out of steam, or so it seems, because in this position, Daniel, he sacks the rook again on e5. Rook takes e5 is the move. Then we have queen takes, and then queen takes c4. Now, Magnus, rook d8, defends the pawn. He's threatening d3, d2, d1. How can Daniel possibly hang on? He goes queen b4, sliding over with the queen. Then d3, the pawn advances. Knight c4, pressures the queen, pressures d2. He tries to defend, but then queen d4. The queen slides down, supports d2, and threatens d2 immediately. In response, Daniel a6, pushing his pawn, but now rook c8 attacks the pin piece. Daniel a7, he's trying, but Magnus, rook takes c4. He simply wins the knight on the c4 square, and in this position, Daniel, he resigns on the spot to Magnus in the attack of the year in this insane online blitz game. Wow, what a game between Magnus and Daniel, again, on the chess.com servers in this insane online blitz game. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed the video, the triple P sack by Daniel. Comment down below what you thought of the game and all this, and smash the like button. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond, and I'll see you in the next video.